I hope you're all having a great week. For those of you stopping by for the first time, hi, my name is Kai, and here on this channel we talk about all true crime cases that happen in the 808 state. So if you're interested in true crime and Hawaii, I highly suggest you join our ohana, join our family, and turn on all your notifications so that you don't miss any weekly uploads. Sorry guys, that's my cat Trixie. Oh no, now she's playing with the cord. Okay, I'm back. Well, that's Trixie. For those of you that have been with me since the beginning, you've seen my cat in the background, but she comes around and she wants to be pet, but then sometimes if I go and try and pet her at this angle, she like attacks. Anyways, please remember that this video is intended to raise awareness. It's never my intent to spread false information, and I try my best in researching all the facts surrounding a case. Also, please remember that this channel is intended for viewers 18 years old and older. Alright guys, before we jump into today's case, this is your trigger warning. Today's case is going to be very, very tough for me even to talk about, but for you to even listen. It does involve a young child. So we're talking about physical and mental abuse, we're talking about neglect, and we are talking about a child that has died. So this is your trigger warning. For those viewers that are super sensitive, please go ahead and click out now, and then I'll see you next week. Anyways, this is what? Number 4 episode of True Crime Thursdays. Super proud of myself. Pat your back. Remember when you were like in elementary and the teacher used to be like, okay guys, good job, give yourselves a pat on the back. Give yourselves a pat on the back too for coming, what is this, 4 weeks in a row. Good job. So let's just start from the very beginning. Shaelynn Lehano Stone was born on September 5th, 2006 to parents Kevin Lehano and Tiffany Stone. From the moment Shaelynn was born, her life was very unstable, and she was already on the Child Welfare Services radar due to the sole fact that Shaelynn's 2 older siblings, a brother and a sister, were already in foster care. In 2007, Shaelynn is taken out of her parents' home and placed in foster care due to abuse and neglect. In May 2008, Shaelynn is then returned back to live with her parents. In August 2008, so about 3 months after Shaelynn is returned back to her parents, there were threats of physical abuse and neglect coming from Shaelynn's mother. But the Child Welfare Services were unable to confirm these reports, so eventually the investigation on this incident was closed. In January 2009, Shaelynn lost a significant amount of weight over the past 2 years. So Child Welfare Services, or CWS, I'll just say CWS instead of saying Child Welfare Services all the time. CWS confirms that Shaelynn, quote, failed to thrive, end quote, in her current environment. So Shaelynn is taken out of her parents' home once again and placed in foster care. In August of 2009, another threat by Shaelynn's mother keeps Shaelynn in foster care until 2011. About a month after Shaelynn is back in her parents' home, Shaelynn's mom, Tiffany, claims that she is unable to take care of Shaelynn. So Tiffany arranges for her mother, Henrietta Stone, which is Shaelynn's maternal grandmother, to take care of Shaelynn, being her power of attorney. So Henrietta Stone, which is again Shaelynn's grandmother, is appointed, legal guardian of Shaelynn. Now, when the state assessed Henrietta to be Shaelynn's caregiver, she was assessed as, quote, minimally safe and appropriate, end quote. So a safety plan was implemented, and the safety plan included parenting services and stress management. In August of 2014, CWS receives a report that all three of the adults in Shaylynn's life, so grandma, father, and mother, are at a moderate level of risk, and so voluntary case management services are implemented. Now, voluntary meaning they're not mandatory, okay? So, being that it was voluntary, there was a face-to-face assessment with Shaylynn's mother and father, but there wasn't a face-to-face assessment with the grandma. And now, at this point now, grandma is the caregiver slash guardian for Shaelynn. Shaelynn was a student at Hilo Union Elementary, but in November of 2015, Grandma Henrietta pulls Shaelynn out of school and fills out that form saying that Shaelynn is going to be homeschooled. Now, Shaelynn is diagnosed as autistic, and she does have developmental delays. But as far as I've read, and as all the articles that I've researched, I didn't see anything where there was, kind of like in-home care services for Shaelynn, okay? Because like I said, she's autistic and developmentally delayed. So she definitely needs that extra, that extra attention, that extra care in learning services. Now, at the time, the Department of Education, they don't have any kind of way to reject or opposed a parent or caregiver or guardian, whatever you call it. They don't have any way to reject or oppose someone pulling a child out of school and wanting to homeschool their child. Now, also at that time, the Department of Education and Child Welfare Services, they don't exchange any kind of information in regards to children that are receiving child welfare services. So that, in my opinion, is a big problem. And we've seen that in many cases before, where the child is pulled out of school because the parent says they're going to homeschool. That is a big red flag. That could be an indicator that the child is being abused. On June 28, 2016, Shaylynn's father, Kevin, was on his way to his second job, but he gets a phone call from home saying that Shaelynn is unconscious and unresponsive. So he goes home to check out what's going on. Now, when Kevin gets home, he sees his daughter lying motionless, and so he picks up the phone and he calls 911. Now, at the time, there were 3 adults in the home, and not one of them picked up the phone and called 911. And what's a kicker is that the family lived on Kaiaulani Street, which is right across the central fire station. And nobody had the decency to go outside and cross the street and get some help from the fire department. When first responders arrive at the home, they find 9-year-old Shaelynn laying unconscious and unresponsive in her own bodily waste. See, Shaylynn's body, her internal organs were already shutting down. Her liver and her kidneys stopped working. Shaelynn was rushed to Hilo Medical Center and she died later that day. Shaelynn was grossly malnourished. At 9 years old, she only weighed 45 pounds. Shaelynn was refused food, water, and medical care. She was physically and mentally abused and grossly neglected. This poor, innocent baby girl. Shaylynn's mother, father, and grandmother were all arrested and charged with second-degree murder. All 3 were held at the Hilo Community Correctional Center, and each had a bail set at $100,000. Now, investigators would learn that Shaelynn was in and out of foster care about 4 to 5 times before Shaylynn's grandmother was appointed legal guardian. Child welfare services inside investigation cite physical neglect, medical neglect, failure to thrive, psychological abuse, psychological neglect, and physical abuse by Shaylynn's mother, father, and grandmother. What's even more discerning is that the report also showed that all 3 adults even threatened neglect to to Shaylynn's maternal cousin. So at this point, all three adults are unable to set bail, so all three would remain in jail awaiting their trials. Now, each of them would be tried separately for their role in starving Shaelynn to death. All three were court ordered for a medical examination to see if they were fit to stand trial. And all three pled not guilty to the second-degree murder charge. Now, it would take some time for this case to go to trial. And because all three, were being charged and their trials were being held separately, it took a long time. Now, in March 22nd, 2021, Tiffany is found fit to stand trial. Now, initially, Tiffany was charged with second-degree murder. But what happened was that the prosecutors offered her a plea deal for a lesser charge, a charge of manslaughter. And Tiffany agreed to this plea deal, so she pleaded to no contest to manslaughter instead of second-degree murder. So now what happens when somebody takes a plea deal and they plead no contest? Basically, it doesn't go to trial. Basically, they accept the punishment, and that's that. There's no witnesses to be called, nothing like that. So Tiffany pled no contest to the manslaughter charge. Judge Henry Nakamoto eventually sentences Tiffany to 10 years of probation for her role in starving her daughter. Now, Tiffany wouldn't spend any more time in jail because she had already spent 4.5 years in pre-trial custody. Like I said, it took a while for this case to even make it this far. All she would get as her punishment is 10 years of probation. Deputy Prosecutor Susanna Tiapula pushed for the 20-year prison term for Tiffany. The prosecutor said Tiffany was a liar and a manipulator who took no responsibility for her daughter's death, blaming it on other people. Tiffany had the nerve to blame it on child welfare services, her mom, her husband. Now, court-appointed attorney Melody Parker argued for Tiffany to just get probation. She stated that Tiffany didn't intentionally want her daughter to die and that she loved her kids, and said that she had to stand by because family court gave her daughter to her mother. When Judge Henry Nakamoto asked Tiffany if she wanted to address the court, Tiffany declined. Now, the next person to go to court was her husband, Shaylynn's father, Kevin Lehano. And I believe his court date was in April 2021, somewhere in April. Now, same thing, Kevin was initially charged with second-degree murder. But with a plea deal with the prosecutor's office, they offer Kevin a lesser charge of manslaughter. So Kevin pleads no contest to manslaughter, and he too gets 10 years probation. Like Tiffany, Kevin will not spend another day in jail because he had already spent 4.5 years in pre-trial custody. Deputy Prosecutor Susanna Tiapula argued for 20 years in prison, just like how she argued 20 years for Tiffany. Tiapula stated that Kevin, quote, had been counseled by medical and social work professionals on many occasions to feed his daughter and not to withhold food, end quote. Kevin did admit in his statement to law enforcement that he did put alarms on the refrigerators that kept his child from getting food or water or, just access to the refrigerator. Public defender Shaelynn Tavares asked the judge sentence Kevin to probation, stating that Kevin is being sentenced for, and I quote, for being the non-participatory defendant, the detached father, end quote. Saying that Kevin worked 2 full-time jobs and said that Kevin installed the alarms on the refrigerators because Henrietta asked him to do that. The public defender also stated that Kevin was the one who called 911 that day. Kevin does get just a 10 years probation and charged with manslaughter. Okay, so that takes care of Tiffany and Kevin. As far as Henrietta, Shaylynn's grandmother, I believe her next date in court is in December 2021. Now, when I tried to research and look up information on what's going on with her case, I could see that there were a bunch of continuances. Also, she is court ordered to take a medical examination, just like Tiffany and Kevin, to see if she is fit to stand trial. And also with that, I guess there were like some issues with some of the medical examiners, the doctors, and they had to like change medical examiners. So it's been taking a while. And of course there was, COVID. So Henrietta is still being held at Hilo Community Correctional Center. Her bail is still set at $100,000. Henrietta too has also been in prison. Henrietta has also been in jail, for 4 years plus. And I know Henrietta also pleaded not guilty to the second-degree murder charge. Now, with that being said, because Henrietta was the sole guardian of Shaylynn when she died, I'm truly uncertain if the prosecutors are going to offer her a plea deal. I don't know. First of all, I don't know if she's going to be found fit to stand trial. That's the first thing. If she's not found fit to stand trial, then this is going to go on a whole different path. If she is found fit to stand trial, I don't know if she's going to be offered the same lesser charge of manslaughter. I mean, you would think they'd want to put a heavy blame on somebody, right? But who knows? We just have to wait and see. I wanted to do this case now instead of waiting to see what happened to Henrietta, just because of the sole fact that Shaylynn's mother and father pretty much got away with murder. I mean, in my opinion, 10 years of probation is nothing, and spending 4.5 years in jail is nothing. I would have wanted to see them spend 20 years in prison. Anyways, moving on. Now, Shaylynn's maternal aunt, Tina Marie Castan, who lives in Florida, she got the okay from Judge Henry Nakamoto to file a wrongful death lawsuit against the state. And I believe the defendants in this lawsuit is Shaylynn's mother, father, grandmother, and the state. Basically, Shaylynn's aunt is saying, hey, you guys have starved her to death, and Child Welfare Services, shame on you for returning Shaylynn back to Henrietta after all the abuse that has happened. Alright guys, that's pretty much all I have for you on this case. My opinion, before we go, I'm going to give you guys my opinion. The fact that mom and dad only received 10 years of probation is a bunch of horse shit. I mean, the justice system in Hawaii is pretty sad. It's pathetic. I mean, this poor innocent child was abused and neglected, and you give mom and dad 10 years of probation. Now, what was interesting is that when I was reading about this case, there were a lot of people who had a lot of not nice things to say about this judge, Henry Nakamoto, saying that he has done this before, just kind of give these parents a slap on the wrist. Anyways, that's my opinion. Don't come for me. Let me know what you guys think. I want to know your thoughts, your opinions, your theories. Have you guys even heard about this case? Alright guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will see you all next week. Bye.